Chapter 9. The New Arrival, Rookie Mistakes. If you are prepared to accept the consequences of your dreams, then you must still regard America today with the same naive enthusiasm as the generations that discovered the New World. Jean Baudrillard, French sociologist, philosopher, and cultural theorist, 1929 to 2007. Early in the morning the next day, Tony received a call from his immediate supervisor, Chpt, that he was being transferred to the destroyer USS Barry, DD 933, berthed at the Boston Naval Shipyard for repairs, but home-ported at Naval Station Navstier, Newport, Rhode Island. Upon receipt of the call, he started packing all his gear and uniforms into a Navy sea bag. He was told to report to the receiving barracks number 209 because his ship was still out at sea for a battleship exercise. While being briefed, Tony never asked questions but listened intently to orders. The supervisor showed him the exact location of the barracks number 209 on the map, and off he went in obedience to his marching orders, map in hand. It was quite a long walk that day, and the weather was chilly and cold. When he finally reached the distant barracks after a 2-hour hike with his heavy gear slung on his shoulder, he found out to his dismay that he could have taken a free ride on a shuttle bus circling the base. Exhausted but relieved that he made it, Tony checked in and was received by a first-class Petty Officer Anderson, a salty boatswain's mate, barracks manager. Knowing that Tony's rate was steward, Petty Officer Anderson assigned him as his coffee boy. The building had 3 stories and housed 100 personnel sailors on each floor. On his first day, he was told to clean 1 berthing space and 1 bathroom shower on the first floor. Because Tony worked quickly, he asked the boatswain's mate for something else to do. On the second day, the boatswain's mate added another floor for him to clean. So 2 bathrooms, one on the first and another on the second floor, were added to his daily chores. On the third day, the boatswain's mate added a 3rd floor to clean. So 3 bathrooms, one on each floor of the whole building, were assigned to Tony. It was like transferring from a frying pan to the fire, as Tony realized the steward job he tried to escape from the Admiral's household was heaven compared to the hell he ended up with. That evening, while in the receiving barracks at Boston Naval Shipyards in the winter of 1959, a big snowstorm hit the Boston area. Tony thought God was making a miracle. For rainwater had turned into snow as it delicately drifted down from the sky. It was still snowing when Tony, thrilled by the spectacle he was seeing, ran out of the building without any heavy clothes on, played and rolled on the snow like a kid. Having come from a tropical country like the Philippines, he could not believe what he was seeing with his own eyes. The boy who once stoically braved torrential rain gusts as he slept on the porch of his aunt's home was now shouting with joy and filled with happiness. His wish was to take all the snow back home to the Philippines and start selling Halo Halo, fruit dessert with crushed ice, as his future business dream. That unabashed moment of joy lives on in his mind even today. Fortunately for him, his ship was coming in to dock at the Boston Naval Harbor in 4 days. The barracks, which sat on top of a hill, had a clear view of the harbor. First-class Petty Officer Anderson summoned Tony as the ship was slowly cruising into the harbor and told him it was his ship. He was told to start getting ready, for he must be on board at 4 p.m. Tony tried to listen to every word he said because he didn't want to commit any mistakes. Without a car to transport him, he had no other choice but to again walk for miles with his heavy sea bag on his back. Tony, again afraid to ask questions, endured a long walk from the barracks to the pier where his ship was docked. After his initial experience, he knew buses were running but didn't dare to board them, as he wanted to save the money for the fare. I was too stupid to know anything, and too afraid to ask questions that later on I found out the bus rides were free for people like me who must travel from the receiving barracks where I was staying to the pier. Although Tony arrived half an hour early, he did not come on board, obedient as he was, until exactly at 4 p.m., following his supervisor's instructions. After rendering a salute to the American flag, he asked permission to come aboard. "Permission granted," responded the duty officer of the deck. An African-American steward named Chpt greeted him on the quarterdeck, saying, "Pizarro is your name, right?" He responded, "Yes." Tony thought another miracle had happened to him as he wondered how the steward man knew his name. Tony was so naive, he didn't know that advanced communication through telephone and naval messages could be done within minutes, and most probably had informed the ship's officer of the deck that Tony was coming aboard that same day. By then, Liberty Call for the off-duty section was announced through the public address system, and everyone who was in the section lined up to get off the ship. That announcement meant that personnel not on duty could leave the ship and return at 8 a.m. the next morning. Petty Officer Cheatham shook his hand and said, "Pizarro, okay, you're off today, and I will see you tomorrow at the wardroom, officers' mess, at 8 a.m. to check you in." Tony replied, "Okay, sir." Since Tony was given liberty and nobody else to check him in as his supervisor told him to see him at 8 the next morning, he had no choice but to leave his gear at the quarterdeck for safekeeping and left the ship as ordered. He was curious and asked other sailors where to go for liberty, and was told to get on the bus and get off at the YMCA building. The ride would cost him 25 cents, so he did. With his last 25 on hand, he was told that one could get an army cot at the YMCA if he liked to spend the night for $1. With no money on hand except the 25 cents, other sailors informed him that a person in uniform could get a coffee and donut for free, which was his supper for the night. With only 25 cents in his pocket, he had no choice but to sit on the steps of the YMCA and try to get some sleep. For him, it was an arduous night to remember. The next day, he took the bus back to the ship with his remaining 25 cents. Tony dutifully obeyed the order of the supervisor to report back to the ship at 8 a.m. His boss met him at the quarterdeck, and he was taken right away to the wardroom with a check-in card on hand to help expedite the check-in procedure for the new arrival ship's crew. Tony was directly introduced to the wardroom mess staff, where all the officers were having breakfast. Because all the officers were present, he was checked in officially within minutes. His supervisor quickly took him by the hand for indoctrination. He was still afraid to ask if he could have breakfast. Days later, he found out he could have taken the bus on the base for free, eat all the meals aboard, sleep on the ship, and take showers on the ship even if he is off duty. When he attended his daughter Wendy's graduation at Harvard University in Boston years later, he wanted very much to visit the same YMCA in whose steps Tony spent the night as a young sailor. The family visited the place, and it brought back many fond memories of Tony's early years in the Navy. His supervisor then showed him the 10 staterooms assigned for him to clean. His instruction to Tony was very clear. By 10 a.m., you have to dump all the trash off the ship on a huge trash bin on the pier and return to the wardroom to help prepare the tables and plates for the officers' lunch, he was told. Tony answered, "Yes, sir, yes, sir." He started with his chores for the day, cleaning the rooms, even if he had not yet eaten anything overnight. At 10 a.m., Tony smartly saluted the American flag at the quarterdeck, and with trash bags in tow, asked for permission to leave the ship. Permission was granted, and responded by the officer of the deck, according to protocol, as he learned from the training. He proceeded to the dumpster area, hidden about 800 yards away. While dumping the trash, he met a fellow Filipino steward from another ship doing the same. Tony was so excited to see another Filipino and chatted with him for only a few minutes. Joyfully, he told him that he just reported on board that morning. However, as he walked back, he noticed his ship, the USS Barry, DD-933, was pulling off and away from the pier. He thought immediately that he was being left behind, and now he was AWOL, absent without leave. Tony panicked and started crying loud, creating a scene as he thought his big dream of being in the U.S. Navy had been shattered and his lifelong dreams would not be realized. "Oh my God," he thought, "my ship left without me." Right away, he got on his knees, cried, and shouted out loud, "Please, Captain, come back and get me. I am on the crew of your ship. Just check on board this morning. Please, please, come back and save me." He was making the sign of the cross. Out of nowhere, he felt a tap on his shoulder. As he looked up, a fellow Filipino berated him. "Tumigil ka dyan, hoy Pinoy ka, nakakahiya ka. Stop what you are doing, you Filipino. You are embarrassing us." Your ship is only changing pier and merely moving to the other side. You look so stupid. Stop that right now, he added. Tony felt embarrassed as he slowly walked back to the ship. From a distance, he saw all of his fellow shipmates laughing and pointing at him as he went aboard the ship. Since I was green and new, I was not scolded by my supervisor, for I was not aware of the Navy terms and language. Later, my fellow stewards taught me and showed me a copy of and how to read the ship's plan of the day, pod. It is to be read every morning in quarters and is available to the crew the day before. It was one of the most unforgettable and embarrassing moments of my entire life. Those were not the only rookie mistakes Tony committed during his initiation into Navy life and the right of survival, American style. Having come from a remote barrio in a third-world country like the Philippines, the modern-day amenities that it lacked in the early 1960s became a source of bewilderment to Tony wherever he saw these technological wonders in the public space in a modernized United States. He always thought it was a miracle of God each time he encountered them. Among his misconceptions were: he thought that television sets were meant to be turned on only by white Americans, as he could not do it himself, not knowing that a remote control could do the trick. He was surprised to see garage doors opening by themselves, again not knowing that remote controls make them do so. He thought that drinking fountains at buildings and airports only worked for white Americans. He was surprised to see water shooting out of a drinking fountain whenever a white American merely stooped over it. When he tried to do the same himself, nothing happened. 1%. He tried to do so several times until he concluded that the device worked for white Americans only. Later on, he found out that one had to press a button with his hands or knee to make the water fountain work. He thought that Brill Cream hair pomade was toothpaste. He used it as one for many months. He thought all the tall buildings in America were churches because back in the remote barrio where he came from, the only big edifice was a church. He always made the sign of the cross whenever he passed by a building. That the reason why white Americans were white was because they always took hot showers. There were no hot showers back home in the Philippines. The first time he tried one, he got a second-degree burn. He didn't know the temperature could be adjusted by mixing together the hot and cold water. He didn't want to be near a telephone. He was afraid it might ring and he might be forced to answer it and embarrass himself in the process, for he was not familiar with American slang. When an officer asked for an ashtray because he was smoking, Tony gave him the trash can. He didn't know there was such a thing as a tray used purposely for cigarette ashes alone. When some Filipino stewards cooked fried rice and dried fish, a Caucasian officer asked Tony, "What's for breakfast?" He replied, "Sinangagatuyo," Filipino words for fried rice and dried fish. He thought he was still in the Philippines and talking to a fellow Filipino. Welcome to America.